How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Satoshi Club for another video where today I'm going to explain to you what these two old boys, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, think about Bitcoin, why they hate it, why they don't understand it, and what makes these guys tick to become billionaire investors in the USA. So if you enjoy the video, drop a like and let's just get straight into it, where I'm going to introduce these two figures to you. So first and foremost, Warren Edward Buffett, as you guys have probably heard, is an American businessman, man-gate investor, and a lot more things, right? He's basically been investing for around 60 years or something. He has been holding Coca-Cola stock for like 40 years, 50 years or whatever, and he's a value investor, which is what you need to know from the start. He has a net worth of over 95 billion because of his value investing attributes, and he's doing pretty well for himself. He also, fun fact, drinks a can of Coca-Cola every single day. Now, is that to promote his Coca-Cola stock or just because he likes it? Probably just because he likes it, but just a fun fact. Now, Charles Munger is an American billionaire as well, where he is the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. And as you can see, these guys do spend a lot of time together. Now, let's just get into a few reasons, or specifically 4 reasons why Warren Buffett doesn't like cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin. First of all, he doesn't invest in unproductive assets. So the same reason he doesn't like Bitcoin is the same reason he doesn't like gold, because it doesn't create any value, and he's a value investor. He wants to invest in stocks issued by corporations that are producing something of value, which is the key definition of value investing. They produce dividends, they produce earnings, and all of this stuff for shareholders. Why? Because they're producing more, they're creating value for the world, they're let's say producing a product that is being sold, that is producing value, and making a turn in the economy, which makes perfect sense, right? Also, he invests in real estate because, even though real estate is an asset that can grow in value, he likes to think that, rather than a piece of land being unused, he would, buy a piece of real estate to build something on it to create value on it. So that's just a little bit into the mind of Warren Buffett for you all. Now, Buffett believes that Bitcoin is only valuable because the person buying it thinks they'll be able to sell it for even more than what they paid for at some point, which brings us to the next point. He actually considers it speculation rather than an investment. So he said that Berkshire's favorite holding period is actually forever, right? He tells investors not to buy Berkshire stock unless they want to hold it for at least 5 years. And this is proven by his huge stakes in stalwarts such as Coca-Cola and American Express that he's been holding for many decades. And he likes to argue that Bitcoin isn't exactly a buy and hold investment. I tend to disagree here, because even though the price fluctuations are so huge, if you actually hold it rather than try to catch the top and bottom, you're making an average out of all these fluctuations, and on average the price seems to be going up over time. So I don't really understand this point of view, but you heard my point of view as well. Probably we should trust Buffett because he's a billionaire, right? Or maybe not. You need to think with your own head, because Buffett actually doesn't even know anything about cryptocurrencies. And that's the 4th reason, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, he said that he's fine if you want to buy yourself some Bitcoin, just don't call it investing, which I also disagree with, because even though, you need the next person to come in and buy Bitcoin from you at a higher price if you want to establish a profit, which is in some way, shape, or form speculation, there is other cryptocurrencies out there, such as Ethereum, that actually provides value in this world in terms of decentralized finance, DeFi applications, decentralized applications, in the global scheme of things, and basically, just provide some value. And that's not only Ethereum, but we'll get to that at some point later on. Now, he also is a stickler for reputation, and he did say before that if, somebody loses money for the firm, and he will be understanding, but if they lose a shred of reputation for the firm, and he will be ruthless, which I completely agree with, right? You built an empire over the last 60 years, you want to keep the reputation intact, which is perfectly fine. He's never going to tolerate anything that would jeopardize Berkshire Hathaway's reputation, which basically means that if he doesn't trust Bitcoin, and if Bitcoin is, correlated with a lot of these stolen goods, with a lot of darknet drug markets and a lot of bad things in the world, he doesn't like to mingle with it, which makes sense, right? He told CNBC in 2019, this is pretty funny, that its only economic contribution may be to cut the demand for suitcases, right? We're talking about Bitcoin, because rather than lugging around money stuffed suitcases, criminals can just use Bitcoin. Okay, Just a little funny little piece of info right here. But, I tend to disagree with this as well, because as with all things in the world, money trafficking, drug trafficking, it's happening in the real world. Bitcoin, just the fact that people are using Bitcoin to make it easier on themselves doesn't mean it's Bitcoin's fault that people are trafficking and doing all this bad stuff, right? It's going on anyways. So I kind of tend to disagree with this. But lastly, he only invests in what he knows, which is what I just said before. And, he just doesn't want to invest in something he doesn't understand, which makes perfect sense. And I agree. He takes a hard pass on cryptocurrencies because, it's even confusing for the tech savvy people how the blockchain works, what are hash rates, which you can, see in literally the past video I made, or, what is mining, what is all this other stuff when it comes to crypto. And if he doesn't understand it, he's not going to invest into it, but it also means he's not going to short it, which also makes sense. Now, lastly, what he told CNBC in 2019 is, why in the world would I take a long or short position in something I don't know anything about? And once again, it makes perfect sense. But let's get a little bit deeper into this whole conversation and see what these guys discussed on their annual meeting that, they hold every single year to talk about investments, to talk about Bitcoin, because a lot of people ask them about Bitcoin on the conference. And basically Buffett praised the US dollar as a means of exchange, even during inflationary times, in part because it's backed by the federal government. Now, a little backstory here. Buffett is actually invested, which you'll see down below, in, American Express and a lot of these other banks and financial institutions and insurance companies in the USA. So this is probably one of the largest reasons why he doesn't like cryptocurrency, because it has the potential to provide a competitor to these services. And if it's a competition to these services, he loses stock and he loses something. So that could be one of the unsaid reasons why he actually doesn't like crypto. But until he says it, let's just forget about that. Now, decentralized currency doesn't come with guarantees from the federal government, which makes sense. Obviously that's why he's not going to invest into it, but there may be a hidden reason, which I just told you. And, furthermore, let's just see why both Buffett, I keep wanting to say Bitcoin instead of Buffett, but let's see why Buffett argues that Bitcoin is not a productive asset. Now, we discussed this a few minutes ago, but I want to go over a few things that he actually said. So if you told me, this is what Buffett said, if you told me you owned all of the Bitcoin in the world and you offered it to me for $25, I wouldn't take it, because what would I do with it? And then he kind of explains that he would like to buy all the farmland in the United States. He would like to buy 1% of the apartments in the United States for $25 billion, but he wouldn't buy Bitcoin even for the price of $25. Why? Because he believes that, nobody is going to want to buy this Bitcoin from him, because if he wants to sell it, then they will be asking, why do you want to sell it? And that explains the key difference between productive assets and something that depends on the next guy paying more than the last guy did, which, goes with his speculative asset argument. Now, also Buffett argues that Bitcoin undermines the US dollar, which he is, severely tied to in a lot of different institutions, such as the Bank of America, such as American Express. And it makes perfect sense that he's a big fan of the US dollar. But in these times of great inflation and a lot of economic downturn and all of these things going on because of rate hikes, it's kind of, it would be good if he learned a little bit about crypto. I mean, not that it's going to matter to him, right? He's a billionaire, he's old, he doesn't really care about these new technologies because he's not going to get a chance to probably witness what they're actually going to do in the future that people like me and you might get a chance to actually see. So doesn't matter. He argues that it undermines the US dollar, and he said that assets, if they have value, they have to deliver something to somebody, and there's only one currency that is currently acceptable, which is the US dollar. And that makes sense, right? But it's very easy to accept payments and whatever not in crypto as well. So what's the argument there? And he also said the one thing that he's pretty sure of is Bitcoin doesn't produce anything, but he doesn't know, or he just doesn't like to say, that Ethereum and all of these other cryptocurrencies that actually provide buildability, actually provide some services, not only in the crypto world, but some efficiencies, such as blockchain is a very, very efficient store of data. It's very efficient for a lot of different sectors in the world, which I did discuss before in my IBM video and a lot more. And, he just doesn't like to see it that way. So whatever, these guys, Buffett and Munger, distrust decentralized finance because, first of all, they're heavily invested in the Bank of America, American Express, and a lot of these other things that are tied directly to the, power of the US dollar. So it makes sense that they don't like Bitcoin because of that. And also, you know, for the majority of their lives, they've been very joined to the American financial system, and it's difficult for them to see any other way of existence, right? And lastly, what he actually said is that he likes to try to avoid things. So this is what Munger said, right? He likes to try to avoid things that are stupid and evil and make me look bad in comparison with somebody else. And Bitcoin has and does all three. It undermines the Federal Reserve System and the national currency system. So I believe that since these guys are so heavily invested into, you know, the US economy and the US dollar and all of this stuff, that's probably the main reason why they don't want to be advocates for Bitcoin. And, you know, they also don't want to short it. And the fact that they don't want to short it means that they still, you know, are open to this possibility that Bitcoin actually grows, or these other cryptocurrencies actually grow and provide more and more value into the future. So they don't want to be fools by buying Bitcoin, but they also don't want to be fools by shorting Bitcoin. And what you can see right here, and what this whole story means for you, it's a pretty interesting chart saying, you know, comparing 4 top cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and Cardano, with 4 really big growth and value stocks, right? Block, Roku, Teladoc, and Shopify all fell, some of them even more than cryptocurrencies fell from their drawdown, right, from their 3-year high. And what does this tell us? That, well, cryptos, you know, like Cardano and Solana, actually had less severe drawdowns than most well-known companies such as these 4 that I mentioned. And what does this tell you? First of all, the stock market is generally correlated with Bitcoin at this point. And second of all, you know, how is Bitcoin bad, right? How are cryptocurrencies bad if the drawdowns are similar to traditional stocks? It's not Bitcoin's fault that it fell. It's the market's fault that it fell right now, because the market had a huge pump since the you know, whole issues from 2020 actually started. And then, you know, the market obviously was overinflated, inflation started happening, and they had to control it and start dropping the market down by increasing rates. So lastly, you know, all of these currencies, cryptocurrencies, Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, all have real use cases in decentralized finance, which is very important to know as well, because, you know, apparently Warren Buffett has no idea, right? So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below with your favorite thoughts about, you know, this video. If you have anything about Warren, Munger, or, you know, a question for me, I recommend you ask it. Now, lastly, I'm not a financial advisor, and you should do your own due diligence before investing into anything in the crypto or blockchain world. And I will see you all in the next video.